So, again, welcome back, and it's my pleasure to introduce our panel here. And this panel is put together to kind of help talk about transition in the state of Illinois. And with that, we have Barb Moore, who's our State Director of Special Education, who is going to, yes, we can give Barb a round of applause. Let's please do that. She is going to be talking, obviously, from a perspective of ISB and the State Board. And then we also have Director Rahnee Patrick, who is the Director of Rehabilitation Services. So let's give her a round of applause. So this is, I think, a very informative panel. And one of our missions here at the Center for Transition and Work is also to look at interagency collaboration across the state, and felt like this would be a really nice opportunity to have the directors of two critical agencies as it relates to transition school to work, to hear from them directly. And the way I'd like this to happen is I'm going to turn it over to Barb first and then Rahnee, and have them just kind of give an overview from their perspective about issues related to transition school to work, and then open it up for questions for you all as well, so that you might have. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Barb.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes. All right, and I know a few of you may not be able to see me, but I'm going to go ahead and remain seated during this presentation, because I'm sure as we get to questions, we'll be bouncing back and forth a lot with answering those. So I do want to begin by thanking both David Strausser and Stacy Diamond and all of the others with the University of Illinois for not only sponsoring this conference, but certainly for all of the work that they have been doing to help us at ISB, at the State Board of Education, really advance the work of transitioning from school to the work setting. So certainly want to also give them a round of applause for their hard work and great efforts. I also want to send out a kind of a unique appreciation here, because as I was preparing for this presentation and really thinking kind of my history on my work in the field and in working in the area of transition, it's been interesting because, again, I started out as a school psychologist. And interestingly enough, even in grad school, I did a paper one time on vocational assessment, thinking that it was probably a unique area that school psychologists probably didn't look at a lot, but as you were assessing and looking at needs of students with disabilities. So I still always had that interest, even way back in graduate school, and we won't say how many years ago that was. Probably predates many of you here. But then certainly when I went into the field, as a school psychologist, then as an administrator, certainly became interested, because our whole goal in special education is to ensure that our students become productive adults and productive citizens as well. So one of my appreciations goes out to somebody that I worked with who really continued to embody and teach me more and more about transition. So Jim Mayer sitting over here, it was just nice to see Jim sitting here, and I was hoping he would be here when I showed up today. So Jim and I actually supervised Jim way back when, and so I feel like it was one of those roles, though, where he was really supervising and training me as we went along in some of the work regarding transition vocational assessment. So thank you so much, Jim, for all you helped teach me over the years as well. But kind of thinking about today and really thinking about what are the types of services and particularly the types of collaboration that the State Board of Education really engages in. And there's quite a few different areas. And I'm primarily going to speak about this again from this perspective of our special education department. But I think, again, I'd be remiss if I did not also acknowledge that we have another department at the State Board of Education, our Career and Technical Education, or CTE department, who also has become very involved in thinking about career planning, technical assistance, other areas to support students, and have been very involved and very collaborative with the special education department to ensure that our students with disabilities are also involved in the CTE programs that are offered within the state, and really looking at inclusive practices and including them in many of the other career opportunities that are happening as well. So, just certainly wanting to share, they've worked, very hard. They do have a percentage of students that they certainly work to ensure that are receiving those services. They do look for, outcomes and things as well. And so I'd always encourage you as well, if that's an area, to really look at their website. If you go to the ISB website, you can go to College and Career Readiness, And then you can learn about the many programs that that the CTE department is certainly working on. And I know they have some special sections for student resources, special sections for school counselors, et cetera. So certainly want to encourage people to look at their work as well. So from the special education department, again, we have a number of resources within our website, so I'll kind of start there first. Again, if you're at the ISB homepage and you look under our special education homepage, a lot of our work will fall under the tabs regarding our Indicator 13. So school people know what that means. Those of you who are not working in the schools probably have not heard of Indicator 13. And usually when I hear people who know Indicator 13, I always say, and do you realize there's probably an Indicator 1 through 12 and some that go beyond 13, that it's just not some unique thing that we're calling this? But it's an indicator as part of our state performance plan that annually the State Board of Education does have to report to the federal government how districts are doing and how we as the state are doing in looking at compliance for the areas of that, again, what we call Indicator 13, ensuring that our IEP teams are appropriately addressing all of the post-secondary supports. Indicator 13 really looks to ensure that every student with a disability, when they're 14 and a half and older, although we reported at 16 and older, which is the federal requirement, but in Illinois we look at 14 and a half and older, we look to ensure, again, that there are annual goals for employment or education and training, and independent living. And then with those goals as well that are based on, assessments that are done with the students, then you're also looking at annual goals. So when we start talking about ISB and we start talking about our school districts, transition in that school to work is starting very young age at that 14 and a half. So there's a lot of work happening at an early stage. In addition to those goals, the IEP, which is the Individualized Education Plan, will also address the necessary transition services. And in particular, what are those linkages to those agencies that are going to be responsible for supporting that student when they leave the high school setting? So again, we already start 14 and a half thinking about how are we transitioning, how are we making linkages to those adult agencies and their supports. And thinking about each year, what is the course of study? What are those different activities that student should participate in that really is going to prepare them for future employment as well. So again, besides Indicator 13 that most people are aware of that the state board does, because many people are like, oh, there's the compliance checklist, or oh, we have a finding, those sorts of things. It really, again, is not about just the compliance, because Indicator 14 is really about our outcomes. It's looking at doing those surveys with students once they have left the educational setting to see, what are their outcomes? What are they doing in regards to employment, in regards to their education and training, or in regards to their independent living once they have exited as well. So it really is, you can't talk about 13 if you don't talk about 14. There's a purpose behind doing that planning, and it's to look at those outcomes. So shifting gears, what else does the state board get involved with transition? Well, one of the things that we certainly get involved with is ensuring that we are funding appropriate projects. So we use a portion of our Individuals with Disabilities Act Part B funds to fund the work here of the Illinois Center for Transition and Work. So we're very excited about that particular partnership and the work that is happening to, again, provide professional development, help school districts in developing and implementing high-quality transition programs in their schools, and really just providing a wealth of resources and information within their website as well. We also fund a program through Illinois State University that is our autism training and technical assistance that does focus on some transition services and supports and providing professional development where we're looking at students with autism. And then we also work very closely with, the legislative department in our agency, with various bills that might come through that really support transition. Many of you may be familiar with House Bill 40, also known as Public Act 102-0172, that again allows, and ISB supported that bill, which allows students who turn 22 during the course of the school year to be able to finish out that school year. And so that, again, was in effect this school year, because prior, students stopped services the day before their 22nd birthday. And this allows now students to finish out that school year and continue to receive those services. And so there's many times, again, that we are coordinating, having conversations with our legislators, et cetera, or trying to implement things that may have come through legislation. You know, a couple of things, for example, is being able to provide the PUNS, which is the Priority Urgency Needed Services, brochures out at all the various IEP meetings. So being able to be that conduit and that resource to get information out as well. And so again, you know, we're pleased that we work with the DHS, who has those documents posted on their website in multiple languages now. I think we started out with English and Spanish, and I looked, and I think there's at least 7 different languages now that are posted as well. So those are certainly things that we do. But the other thing I think that's really important that the state board does is really, you know, try to participate in a variety of different committees, task force, again, at that statewide level, so that we can be kind of the voice for the school districts and others in working across the state in a number of areas. So for example, I had mentioned before, we do work with the Autism Training and Technical Assistance Project, but also then there's an autism task force that does focus with kind of a subcommittee focusing on transition. So we have representatives there. We have a representative on the Employment First group. One of the ones that I get to participate on, I'm appointed to, is the State Rehabilitation Council. So I get to hear all the lovely updates from Rahnee and the work, and keep in touch in terms of the work that DRS is doing. We have staff who participate in the STEP Advisory Council, and so a lot of coordination with Jim and others who've been a part of that council. We have staff participating with the Illinois Task Force on Employment and Economic Opportunity for Persons with Disabilities, also known as EEOPD, which every time I say, I'm so used to saying EOPD, so I had to look up to make sure I was reading that correctly to get the full name there. We participate on the Statewide Independent Living Council. The Illinois Council of Developmental Disabilities has a transition committee that we have a staff on. And then our own ISB Advisory Council on the Education of Students with Disabilities often focuses, in the last few years, has had a committee also that has focused in so that our advisory council can learn more about the work on transition. And so our different representatives to these various task forces have come together to be able to share the information both with our advisory council as well as others within our agency. So I think that's a huge role for us to be able to, again, have the voice in many of the state meetings and be able to hear, you know, and participate. In terms of thinking about, you know, how we approach interagency collaboration, not only just from all of those meetings, I always say at the state level, we're there to work and get information to districts and be able to answer questions for districts, but then we also do that at that national level, so we're kind of that medium. So we'll do some work with the INTACT, which is the National Technical Assistance Center for Transition as well, and we will reach out to them for resources and supports. So many times when we are presenting forms and things out, those have really been developed by INTACT, and so we certainly go to them. They are funded by the U.S. Department of Ed, Office of Special Education Programs, so they are a great resource. Other things, I think, in terms of interagency work and the work at the district level that I forgot to mention when I was talking about the IEPs, is encouraging that those community agencies, again, are involved in those IEP meetings. And it's really paying attention to ensure that the right person is there, so that if somebody is being invited, but they really aren't going to be the one who truly provides those adult, maybe they can then forward to the right person. It really is important. I know sometimes, again, when the agencies might be short-staffed, it's hard to get everybody to as many IEP meetings as there may be, particularly if all of them are being held in the springtime. But certainly, you know, try to set up those relationships and those supports as well. I am going to stop there. I know I'm going to talk about some barriers a little bit, but to probably catch my breath, I might go ahead and turn it over to Rahnee, and then maybe we can address some barriers together, if that sounds okay.
Well, I feel like giving you some applause on that, Barb, so thank you.
A lot going on. Thank you, Rod.
Am I holding this okay? Okay, can you hear me if I go like this? Okay, okay. So I guess if I ask if you can't hear me, that's probably like not gonna work, so. So I'm the director of rehab services, and I also have a physical disability. I use a wheelchair. I also walk too. It's because I have arthritis. I've had arthritis since I was 10, so that's 38 years now. And I also developed psoriasis when I was 8, and I was in 81, which was head to toe, because everything about me is extraordinary. So I wanted to give you that physical description. I also have dark curly hair. And I'm wearing a plum suit, and I got some design on my shirt. And I run an agency that is tasked with helping people with disabilities get employment. We also do a lot of components around what's called the home and community-based waiver services for people with physical disabilities. But I wanted to point that out because when we're talking about what, Barb, I think you did a really good outline about like all of these mandated like roles that people have to play to be able to get to the component of like successful transition. I was a person with a disability in school. I did ride the special education bus. Many of my fellow bus riders had all kinds of disabilities. And I was on a 504 plan, probably starting, like, I don't even know, but I for sure had modified classroom, and like, you know, some rules were modified for me to be able to get to graduate from high school as well as college. And I'll have to say, graduating in 1992, and if you haven't checked out the Netflix White Hot, you should totally check it out if you're my age group. But and when I graduated in 92, and now we're here in 2022, I'm going to have to say that I don't think that things have changed very much from the agency that I run. I'm still hearing a lot of experiences that I also had. So what I'm going to tell you in terms of my transition, I think relates a lot to what you probably all have experienced yourself. Do you mind if I get a sense of the room? How many folks get paid by the Division of Rehab Services, or your agency gets paid by Rehab Services? Can you do like a hand clap? Like make some noise. Yeah, I know, it's like, yeah, Rehab Services. Okay, anybody get paid? Any school districts, schools? Any staff who are willing to claim that I'm your director? Oh. Okay, any independent living centers? All right, cool. Any, let's see, who else was on our partnership list there?
Oh, gosh. STEP advisory, people who are heavily involved in STEP.
Yeah, we got okay. Any DD providers? Developmental disability providers? Day services or anything like that? Okay. All right. I just wanted to get a sense of that space, and I also hope that it illustrates like all the folks that have the stake of what we're talking about. Like what's at stake? Like what's the loss if all of us don't work together? People with disabilities who are an extremely talented group of people will not be able to engage in industries that currently need to succeed to make a difference in our world. That's what's at stake if we don't get together. And that includes whether or not my agency is doing its job. So all of us not being able to work together is like a really big loss. And so that is what and I hope my staff can attest to this. I talk about this all the time, right? These are the stakes. And so it's very, very hard work. Like you pointed out, Barb, I was a little disappointed you did point it out, but you're right. VR staff are not able to come to all IEPs as mandated. All right, sorry, but we want to. We really want to. I mean, we have, there's some shortcomings that are happening, but I do think that when we look at working, like people with disabilities in general, like it's not one of the highly valued communities in our planet. We're not like an experience that people wanna have. Like we're actually like one of the lower on the lower level in terms of people experience. We're not something that people want to get cured of this experience. And so when you all are coming in and claiming that you want to be when you're supporters and you work for people with disabilities, you're pledging to assist people that are not highly valued. And so I want you to think about like where we are in terms of positioning about getting people to be like included in a way from where we are, which is devalued. So it's a huge task. So when we talk about vacancies in my agency or not getting enough referrals or like that I'm going to need to sue a school because they didn't include Rahnee Patrick, and they didn't follow her, value her rights. You've got to remember like where we're at in terms of the value of those experiences. So I want to put that out there when we talk about that. And so what happens is that I think we do have these mandates that we have to follow because there are the push to get those things to happen. I'm only here because of an election. And when there's another election, somebody else will come in. And so, one thing that I hear from people with disabilities when I do have like focus groups with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities across the state. I'm only really interested in talking to people with disabilities in Illinois. What they are saying to me is that for me to be able to work, Director Patrick, I need supports wherever and whenever I want them. I need them paid. I can't lose my Social Security. I need transportation to get there that I don't need to cover, and so fix it. I mean, that's what they're telling me. And they're not wrong. And then they have to navigate all of these different systems that are put in place that you got to fill out all this form and that form and get approved, and maybe somebody will be convinced in their assessment that you're devalued enough to be able to be qualified as a disabled person. So there's a lot of different changes that are coming up when I think about this. So what's my locus of control as the director of rehab services? So what are we doing? You guys, I hope you guys went to. I hope everybody went to the customized employment, right, training, right, about VR services. I know you didn't, but it's okay. But that customized employment, right, that's like a really cool thing that had to be legislated, and now rehab services is, developing providers to be able to utilize and get paid for discovery, right, which is a time for people with disabilities to just be who we are and get engaged and kind of get witnessed and see what skill set, where does that skill set fit into these industries and that are needing to get talent to come into them. We have support employment. When I came into the division, support employment was not utilized very well. There's been an enormous increase for support employment, which is actually a key to one of the goals of competitive integrated employment for people with disabilities. So both customized employment, support employment, we really have to boost it up for us as the rehab service to be able to achieve our goal of competitive integrated employment. And then when folks with disabilities are talking about supports, we're talking about, really limitless job coaching, right? Limitless toileting assistance job site toileting assistance, or being able to do things like that are not just home-based, but they are services that you can get on demand. Transportation services like paratransit, door-to-door service. Me being married to a guy who got arrested because buses didn't have lifts on them, Also mainline services that people can wait for and get on the bus and use those kind of systems. People need training to be able to navigate those things. And then SSI, Social Security, but that's not what I can't control Social Security, but those kind of things around supported employment, customized employment, those home and community-based waiver services for people with physical disabilities, HIV, or traumatic brain injury. Those are the things that I'm working on to be able to get assistance. We also brokered an intergovernmental agreement with the Division of Developmental Disabilities so that people who are using the waiver services in developmental disabilities that have employment services as part of their waiver service menu, that when they come off of our time-limited waiver service or services, like the job coach services, that if they're on those services already, they should be able to utilize those through the Division of Developmental Disabilities. I haven't done enough. I've done those things. It's been 3 years, but those aren't enough to do the big picture that we need to shoot for every day. But that's what I've been able to do so far. But I know it's not just on me, it's on all of us here in this room and a whole lot more people that we know. Thank you.
Thank you both for your comments. To start out with, if there's any reactions or comments that people want to make to either of the director's comments, we can certainly do that. I have a microphone here, and I know this is kind of on the fly, but maybe I could get one of our PhD students, I'm looking over at their table there, to help kind of maybe go around and be the mic. Hannah, you look like you're volunteering. So, or Ricky, either one of you if you don't mind. But I would like to just take this opportunity here to open it up to the floor. I do have some questions myself to ask them, but I think are really important for you all to have your voice, to take this opportunity that we have two directors here in the room to ask any questions and respond to what they have. And I'm going to meet Hannah halfway here. Thank you for being on the fly, Hannah.
Any takers?
Yeah. Any questions or comments anybody has?
I would say while we're waiting for people to ask questions, I think one of the things I wanted to just piggyback on what Rahnee shared is she did talk a lot about, and started in with some of the barriers, the navigating the systems. And I'm hoping, again, that these types of trainings and the work that the Center for Transition and Work is doing will really help at least, school personnel even, trying to understand what are the different systems. How do we navigate those systems? Because, it's not just a barrier sometimes, again, for our schools to understand all the complexity, but certainly as well, the families and how difficult, as you were sharing, and the adults then, that are students with disabilities, trying to understand and navigate. I think that's probably one of the number one barriers is there's a lot of systems, and I think you alluded to, as I said, there's a lot of competing goals when we start talking transition. And for somebody, their goal really is so focused on just meeting those basic needs and the medical needs, the housing needs, those benefit needs, that that's stopping to think about the employment needs. And so again, being sure that as the school personnel, and I'm speaking to all of you here, that you ensure that conversation about that employment also stays first and foremost. And how do you ensure that you're talking with those families about all of the needs as well, and you're thinking about all of those needs in that transition planning, because you're looking at education, you're looking at training that they may need for that employment, but then in the context as well of that independent living and all of those areas. So something I wanted to add in. And then I think too, you shared, your shortages with VR staff. Well, we're guilty of that in schools as well. How many of you are experiencing where you don't have enough job coaches right now to support your work? You don't have the paraprofessionals in your classrooms right now to support what you really want to do with some high quality transition programs, or not even having, enough special education teachers, and vocational coordinators, et cetera. So that the shortages is huge for the schools as well. So I did want to highlight that as well.
Thank you. questions or comments? Usually the first one to break the ice here. Jim?
So Rahnee and Barb, both of you referred to, some of the different public benefits some of our students may be receiving, be that SSI or, some may have some housing programming and other things. I know that your agency, Rahnee, has had over the years a specialist in benefits. I think Kaylee Raymond is still with you.
Yes.
And it's been a few years since I worked with Kaylee on this, but it used to be that if there was an individual who was looking at accepting a job, but who was concerned about some of those, multiple benefits they might be, receiving and how that would be affected by employment. It used to be they could go connect with Kaylee and get a printout of how their benefits would be affected. Is that still a service that's available? And can you, just speak to that a little bit for our audience here? I think there might be some real interest in that. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So benefits planning is something that we do provide. And Kaylee is the one person we have at Division of Rehab Services, and really doing, I really admire her for that. Benefits planning is something, so the way it worked out for me, and this, I just wanted to tell it like this so that you can kind of, I don't know if anybody's like concrete, but this is how it worked out for me. I, 18, had to be 18, went down to the Social Security office to apply to claim my disability. They then deemed me disabled, shocker, and then I got Social Security, 300 some bucks a month. What that then does is, then when I wanted to work, I was working on campus, I had to give my gross income paycheck to the Social Security office to tell them that this amount of money I got from working in the computer lab, after $38, they'd have to reduce $1 for every $2 I earned on my paycheck. And so then that same paycheck would also impact my Medicaid, which I had to apply for at 22 because I got kicked off my dad's insurance. I was not a dependent anymore. So to be on Medicaid, to stay on Medicaid, I had to only earn $19,629 in gross income to qualify for Medicaid, which actually helped me to get my home health services paid for, which being clean through the home health services helped me to have the job that I needed and get ready for the job that I had to go to. And so that's a lot of numbers and balancing and considerations that people have to make when they have to get employed. So the benefits in my personal story was Social Security and Medicaid, which often are tied together in terms of eligibility. Also, to be in my program, vocational rehabilitation, you can be presumed eligible right away if you are on Social Security. So that benefit helped that. To the counseling component, and there's like a couple different entities in the state of Illinois who do this, they do this printout telling you, okay, Ronnie Patrick, if you make 16,000, I forget what I still remember. This is so gross. This is how gross stuff can be for people with disabilities. If you make $19,630 a month, this will mean that you don't qualify for Medicaid anymore. So what will you do with that information? So it gives you data about how your benefits will play out based upon the paychecks that you're getting. What we're hearing currently, and this is reported from the Division of Developmental Disabilities, is that, and this is, I think we need to figure out how benefits. So what I'm going to say, don't get mad about minimum wage, but get mad about the asset limits. Minimum wage is getting in the way or somehow causing the need for people to, I don't want to work anymore because it's going to kick me off of my benefits. So, why do we have limits on benefits for people with disabilities who are doubly unemployed versus people without disabilities? That's my question, and that's my like big campaign and my role right now is to do something about the asset limits. But until that campaign is realized, those are the navigations that people have to do. And there's like, the 4 agency resources, I don't have at the tip of I don't have in front of me, but somehow that information can be given to this group here.
Rahnee, just out of clarity,
Yeah.
could you describe asset limitations, just what that is and why that term is relevant to the benefits counseling?
Oh, sure. Boy, I forget sometimes this. I don't know, you seem like more of the researcher. Asset limits? Okay. Don't you guys feel like that? Like I feel like you're like the calm reason, and I'm the more outrage. Okay. So help me out here. Calm reason. Okay. All right. So asset limits means that if you've got, this is what I learned in '92. If I had a burial plot, if I got a gift of cash for my birthday, if I got a car or a house or things like that, those are all assets. Now, in the state of Illinois, assets that are exempt to be on my program for the home services program, you can have a car, you can have a house. What else is it? Casey, do you remember? I'm not gonna put you on the spot. But like it's those kind of things, right? You can't have a retirement account. You can't have, you can have an ABLE account, that's exempt, because that's for disability. You just can't have like things of cash value or money value that's available for your care, that's available for you to liquidate and use. So that's what an asset is. Now that's different from income. And so like there's the Medicaid buy-in program, right, where people can buy into staying on Medicaid. You can only make up to $42,000 in gross income a year to buy into that program. But that's an income base. So that limit, 42,000, that's the income limit. So there's like some differences there. How did I do on that?
From my perspective, you did fine.
Okay, all right.
Does that have more questions or comments from anybody?
And I think I'd follow up because you mentioned the ABLE accounts.
Good.
And so anybody following the legislative session, this past session, there was a bill that has gone through the session, has gone through both houses of the legislature and has passed, and is just waiting for the governor's signature that will require IEP teams to provide information regarding ABLE accounts at the IEP meetings. Currently, we are working at ISB with the Treasurer's Office for, the brochures that would be distributed. So we don't currently have those available. However, on our website, we do have the link to the website about ABLE accounts. So we do have a link. I would encourage school people to start to become familiar. If you've not heard about ABLE accounts before, become familiar. Those, again, are savings programs, but like I said, we will be working to get brochures out. In the message I had this morning, it sounds like they may not have the brochures. They're maybe looking that they would be distributed in the spring of 2023 for those IEPs, and giving them time this fall to work on those brochures. But as soon as we get them out, we'll get them posted and get messages out to the school districts. But I do think that is an important one for people to be aware of as well. So as you distribute the PUNS brochures, you'll also be distributing brochures regarding ABLE accounts.
Hi, I don't know if I have a question or a comment, so I'll just leave that as I say these few things. One of the programs that I oversee is I have a building 55 to 60 students in the 18 to 22 transition program. 100% of these students need some type of support when they exit. 75% absolutely need PUNS support to be able to continue on. And so I know that we're checking our, everything that we're supposed to on our indicator 13, but when it comes to 14 that you mentioned, where are they after that? Probably not real good because they're so tied to other things out of their control. And I just wondered if you could talk about the future of that system in the state of Illinois.
That's where we wish we had the other director here, because she would have been able, and I'm just blanking on her name at the moment, Allison Stark. Allison would have been able to speak to that. as well. And even though it's called the prioritization urgency, I think she'll speak to, they're kind of moving away from the word prioritization, but because everybody knows it as puns, it's a little bit different. So I do know that there are some changes. I just don't know that I feel that I'm the expert to speak to those. So I don't know if Rahnee, if you can speak to any changes happening.
Well, I know for sure that during these past 3 years that the investment to that system that you talked about, or the supports that you talked about, has been a tremendous. It's been tremendous, and I think Director Stark has been very, very committed and driven to making sure that those services are available. But that is as much as I know. I regret that she wasn't able to make it today.
Just for clarity, Director Stark was invited, and unfortunately, herself and representative for her office were not able to make it. So we certainly hope in the future that they will be part of the panel.
I had a question when you were talking about assets, and the minimum wage is also part of that, the $2,000 like in the bank cap that people are, is that something you're working on changing as well? I didn't hear if you mentioned the financial assets just in the bank.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know how much control I have over that part. What I did have control over, though, is just having more exemptions allowed for people with disabilities. Yeah. So, I mean, in California, I don't know if folks heard about this. So in California, they raised up that from 2,000 up to 130,000. Yeah. So, which is a lot of families, Yeah. For me, this is I want to make sure I answer your question too. Like for my program, for the home services program, that waiver we have, the three we have, we don't have that. That's we let people have income, like limitless income for work. Yeah.
Other questions or comments that people have? I have one that I think would be, of interest to the group here, hopefully, would be, from both of your perspectives, how has the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act and PREATS really impacted how transition services are being delivered across the state? And then the follow-up to that would be, what's changed and maybe what needs to change?
Take it first.
Okay, sure. Well, I would have to say, for me, what we've been able to do, and where's my Sills at? Sills, do your clap. Yeah, Sills! All right, CIOs, and there's Katie Blank, who used to work with me at Access Living. Miss you guys so much. Okay, get over yourself. Okay, so that helps a lot. Like the contracts that we're able to do with Centers for Independent Living and other agencies that help us do the PREATS. So CIL, Centers for Independent Living, are agencies that are run by people with disabilities for disabled people. 50% or more of their staff, management, and board have to be disabled people. And they're federally mandated to provide advocacy, both individual and systemic, peer support, independent living skills training, information referral, and did I get them all? What's that? And transition from nursing home to the community, or transition, just like we're talking about here. And so we are able to contract using PREATS definition with Centers for Independent Living. Why do I think that's super cool? Because a disabled person typically is not born to a family of disabled people. And so the idea that you are super cool or you are a whole person with your disability is something that you often need to find other people to connect with. CILs have staff mandated with those kind of characteristics. And it's really great to be able to define PREATS with services that exactly Centers for Independent Living have to do. Because some of the times when you're working, soft skills, like just that basic ability to feel have that confidence is so essential to, success in the job. So I'm really happy about the PREATS piece. And I want to say strange fact, I know that, we got a lot of work to do, but don't you think Texas and California have more population than Illinois, right? Yeah? Okay. No? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Guess what? Division of Rehab Services has more young people in our program than those two states. I'm really, really proud of my staff for being able to bring in so many young people into our division for vocational rehabilitation because of the indicators at WIOA.
I don't know that I have a lot additional to add. I always say, I'm not the expert on transition. I just know the work that we do around that. But I certainly would say, as you had shared, it gave people, to step back and think about what those programs are and be able to look at, when you're setting up those job sites and you're looking at those employment opportunities as well, to be able to keep that information. And I would say as well that inclusiveness, I know, like I said, when talking with our CTE department that I mentioned earlier, and them ensuring that as they're setting up programs and things as well, they're really looking at that more inclusive sort of practices because they're looking at those sorts of areas as well.
Good. Okay.
Hi, I had a question. Thank you both so much for being here. This is such a great learning opportunity. As a previous special educator and administrator, I think that sometimes those great resources might not always be as accessible or trickle down to the classroom. And so when I think about the brochures and how they're accessible in many languages now, are there other pathways that are being considered to distribute that information to teachers if perhaps it's not as naturally accessible from perhaps their administration or resources in the building? Just so many of the teachers I talk to are so fatigued right now in this post-COVID somewhat era, and so just thinking about how to easily get that pertinent and really important information to teachers.
That's a great question. So I know, one of the things, I just hired somebody recently and they're going to start doing a newsletter for our department, which I have not had in the 3 years that I've been there, where I want to highlight a lot of our resources, because I tell people they can go to their website, but the website gets very overwhelming and it takes me sometimes hard to find that information. But to be able to have kind of targeted each month, highlighting some of our various projects, highlighting things that are the resources within our website, having those sections there for administrators, for teachers to know where those resources are. But certainly, like I said, if you ever struggle too, just certainly reach out. We have teachers who call our department all the time and just say, I know you probably have this information. Where can I find it, so that you can bookmark where to find those pages as well.
We're piloting ways for people, and I don't know if this is like teachers just specifically, so I hear what you're saying about like something more targeted, right? So we're piloting for some time, a little bit of time, opportunities where on websites, like on news cycles and things like that on the internet, there's ads that come up. And so then we're using search engine optimization to bring up Division of Rehab Services advertisements. We did create a video that kind of walks people through the process, but it's like more like, avatar kind of style conversation. So those, we'd like to procure more of that kind of style of outreach so that it's, more relevant. One thing I think that comes up when you're using search engine optimization and, ads that TikTok kind of style, which is the more you click, the more it kind of directs you to something, is for young people, what sort of tone or title or topic would make them click so that they would run into something about disability and employment? So for example, my brother, he has epilepsy, and he's a search engine optimizer for Brother Industries, the printer company. And he having had his disability as a young person, he's like, I don't really know if, saying, woo woo, disability, da da da, come and get a job. Would that have drawn him in, And so I guess that my research brain is kind of running now, what is the psychology that would pull people in, right? Because this kind of stuff is very psychological based. So that's something that I'm running up against, is the understanding of how young people with disabilities tick and what brings them in, to understanding about the programs that might help them to get places. I don't know, and you all probably have some answers too about, that. I would love to know.
I would say the other thing that we do at the state board, as you mentioned, website, is we've been doing a lot to kind of, what I would say, clean up the website in the sense that not just list anything there that somebody has downloaded, that because looking at that vetting system, having, again, the center who can keep track of what are some of those best evidence-based practices. But then our website, if we do include anything, it typically has been from a project that's either funded by ISBE, such as the center, or has been funded by the U.S. Department of Ed Office of Special Ed Programs. So almost everything. So that way, again, the forms and stuff are always going to be there, but in terms of if we're presenting other information or booklets or anything, it has been something that has come directly from U.S. Department of Ed, one of their funded technical assistance centers. So that, because again, a lot of those search, if you don't have that to try to optimize that search, we're trying to at least narrow what we provide that we know has come from U.S. Department of Ed or from one of our funded projects.
Thank you. Other questions that people have? Yeah, great.
I'm a DRS transition specialist.
Yeah, thank you.
But the website made me think of something. When I have customers who are moving to another state and their parents ask for information about DRS in another state, I notice other states' websites are so much more informative. I don't know, have you noticed that, or have you gotten that feedback before? Is there anything you could do that we could direct even to ours for parents, that really say more? It's so general, it's just way too narrow. That's the way I feel.
Yeah.
But
Are you speaking from the state board side or
No,
more the
DRS.
The DRS site?
DRS site,
Well,
DHS, DRS. So.
Yeah, I haven't compared other VR agencies' websites with ours, but I would love to know what you found. And I'd like to, one of the things that I'm very interested in is continuous improvement process. So the feedback that you have and applying it would be very helpful in
Okay.
the way I'd like to run the organization.
You want me to send you an email?
Yeah, please.
I think some other part, communication with DRS, I'm not even sure who to tell when things like that happen, when I'm and I've been noticing it over years. So I'm I need to copy some of this down so I can put that verbiage in what I tell people, so thank you.
Yeah, you can email me, and anybody can email me, and I tell parents and everybody about it. So you can email me directly, and my name is rahnee.patrick@illinois.gov, and then you can call me on my my work cell, which is 773-360-4256.
I'll add as well, if, again, questions, feedback for the state board on our website, or questions of things that were presented today, it's BMOORE, BMOORE @isbe.net.
We really, it's all of us, like I said. We're really undoing a long time expectation of people with disabilities. The only way that we would earn income is to beg on the street. That's what the belief system has been, and 1600s, if not earlier. So we're undoing a historical, level of discriminatory expectation together. So the information that you have to assist me in my staff to be able to make a difference in this area is welcome.
So you all now have direct access to the director's office. There's no excuse. You have complete access. So, yes.
Hi. So in my role, I assist families in their kids becoming DRS clients. And a bulk of my students that become clients are not what we're here for is the transition and work, but they are college bound or certification program bound, like vet, tech, CNA, kind of like our in-betweeners. So I know DRS has a whole other side that we haven't kind of touched on today with post-secondary education support, the college initiative, et cetera. Could you maybe give some information on where that's headed? Anything you can share about that aspect of DRS?
I really appreciate you asking about that. So those are called, in WIOA indicators, that's called measurable skill gain, getting a certificate or going to college. And under my directorship, we are one of the leaders in the nation for vocational rehabilitation agencies. We have 62%. The goal in our report was to be 50% measurable skill gain, and we're currently at 62%. And so this is something that's very important to us, given also that people with disabilities are less educated than people without disabilities. So double people without disabilities have bachelor's degrees compared to people without disabilities. And so we do have resources. That's actually how I was educated for my bachelor degree, was through vocational rehabilitation, paying for my books. The bookstore had a voucher that they would subtract whenever I come in to get pens and paper and things like that. They paid for my scooter that I needed to navigate campus. And they paid for my tuition at a state school. So those are the things that vocational rehabilitation can pay for. We also pay for folks to be able to get certificates like food handling certificates and things like that, so that you're more you got like a cutting edge compared to other people that might be applying for jobs. So those are kind of, we have this flexibility in our program for people with disabilities who have barriers to employment to help them acquire things, help us to acquire things like this, so that we can be able to be competitive in employment. So that is the direction I want us to go as a division. I set the 50%. Well, actually, I wanted to be 6, because I don't know if you guys, how many people have worked in state government before, or any kind of government. You have like the lifetime civil servant people. And, so I had this whole exchange. When I came in 2019, it was 40%. And I was like, no, we're not doing 40%, we're doing 60%. And so it ended up being 50 in the actual report. The director, you guys put 50. But we still kick butt, though. We're at 62%. We're like the best in the nation now. So this is something that I think is very, very important to me in the division. So we did do a college initiative, as you pointed out, where regardless of income, people could get college paid for through the Division of Rehabilitation Services. And it's something that I want to continue as I am allowed to do this role.
And as I mentioned earlier, again, just checking out, whether, again, the school districts that you're working with have any career in tech ed through CTE funded programs as well, that those students can get those sorts of experiences. And then certainly, those connections, ensuring, again, that, in other places where we're saying, have these people at the IP meeting, it's important to have, if there's certain universities, having those people from their disability services there as that representative at those IEP meetings as well for those students. To provide those supports. I do know we have a couple of other members of our department as well from the state board who serve on some different advisory councils and things at some universities, who are certainly expanding some of their programs for disability services. So they certainly serve on some of those boards to really try to enhance what those services can be provided at the university level as well.
And Barb, you reminded me too that Division of Mental Health, which is part of the the portfolio of Department of Human Services. They also started, they're paying for, with a collaboration with the College Board, they're paying for people who have psychiatric disabilities to be able to be certified recovery specialists to earn that certification. And so with that certification, and then we would like to help folks then get in the field of being, to work with nonprofits that are serving people with mental illness. So that's an innovation that came out of Department of Human Services too. That's a CRSS certification.
Great, thank you. We have a question back here.
Hi, is there any talk of allowing or changing the system where students 18 to 22 are in a post-secondary program, but they can't access any of the, like, even local community college DRS options because you can't double dip? So, like, we have multiple students who would like to access programs but still need that post-secondary support, and they won't choose to go in there because they have to take their diploma and then no longer have, like, support.
There certainly has been some different legislation. I'm not going to be able to speak completely on that. That came through this legislative session too regarding dual credit coursework as well, and certainly looking at those areas, particularly again with our students of a variety of different disability needs and stuff as well. So certainly reach out to me. I can kind of hook you up to kind of see where some of that language is happening as well.
Thank you, Barb, because I had no idea what that was. Thank you.
Other questions people have? Hold on, let's get a mic over here. Yes. Yeah. We want to make sure you're heard here.
So one thing that I have found to be just extremely valuable is having, and I know I'm blessed, right, but having the DRS representative that actually works within the school building. So like, it's like 2,500 students, and they'll take care of any student that qualifies. So is there any initiative, like and then I hear of like the obstacles are like when you don't have that DRS representative. So just, is there like how is there like just planning, or just like how can that be like in the forefront of trying to, I think that's like just a crucial piece to the success, right, of the program. So I just was wondering what your vision or possibly, and I know it's all based on staffing, but like, there it is.
Yeah, you're so kind. I really appreciate that. You were very kind, because if it was me, I'd be like, So.
So Rahnee, I think what he's asking is, why is there not a DRS counselor in every high school across the state of Illinois? So that's.
He's not wrong. You're not wrong.
I'm trying to editorialize for mine. I hope I captured the essence of your question, but yes.
It's a crucial piece to the success and the partnership, and why I feel like I've been successful in supporting my students.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, and what's really cool too is that you're a school that does want our rehab counselors. So we've got I've got a local office in the southern suburbs of Chicago. They're right across the street, Dixie Highway, from the school that won't ever let them in the school. So thank you. And as we all know, and we've seen the videos, that there are those are the best practices about when you can co-locate, right, folks that are in the roles to kind of get them. And also, you should know I have a master's in organizational psychology, so there's this whole thing that I won't get into about why that works. But those are great. There are, how many school districts are there in Illinois?
852.
852, okay. Well, let me write that down, and let me see what kind of job titles could be created.
Yeah, with Chicago Public Schools having 650 schools, though. So Chicago Public Schools, though, does have 650 schools. So I don't know what our total number of schools are in this state, but when we say 852, we have to keep in mind Chicago is one of those.
Of the 850?
Of the 852,
But it's
yes.
852, though, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, this is how, this is what I'm totally jamming on right now. So like 852, now I've got a number, Casey Sherry's gonna.
Some of those might be elementary only some may be elementary only districts, they may be unit districts, they may be high school districts, so.
Right.
I don't have the breakdown of each of those.
I don't know, this is a pretty good number though for me to work on, so. But see, this is how it starts. So, great question, and now I know the number of staff titles that I need to tackle, and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
And I do think one of the things that we see as well, again, it's kind of educating some of the schools on what those services are, and we certainly have schools who are very open to participating, for example, in the STEP program, so the Secondary Transition Experience Program, where other schools may not, because maybe they have their own work site, maybe they have some other things, and so I know one of the things in the collaboration with DRS has been interesting is they're like, if they don't want that, then what would they want? We're willing to do something else. Like, we're willing to offer something else in schools who maybe don't want that program. And so I think sometimes it's just helping people understand that DRS is just not STEP, or the DRS transition specialist is just not there for STEP. And I think it's just education that needs to happen at times as well.
Yeah.
So I think next year we'll have the governor's direct line so that we can talk about budget and allocation of resources. So yes. Any other questions here as we're kind of winding down? So I have one just to kind of maybe a conclusionary, I don't know if that's a word, conclusion question here of, so to both of you, just if you could kind of talk about what do you think from interagency collaboration between DRS and ISB, what can be done to potentially improve that? And what are things that maybe we need to, as educators, as researchers, as technical assistance providers, think about in terms of helping strengthen that relationship?
I think one of the first things that comes to mind is what we both shared before is that barrier of navigating the systems. And how do we work together to ensure we're giving consistent, valuable, easy, understandable information to our families and to our schools and to the providers about the various opportunities that are available. And I think the more we can figure out the best system for doing that to ourselves, understand everybody's systems, but how to get that to everybody else will certainly, I think, be one of the areas. And we've certainly have had some of those initial conversations, but I think that's the work we need to continue to focus on is how do we pull it all together to make it make sense and not be an overwhelming system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that is totally accurate. And I think too that I would really love just a way to be able to, pump the information about what's available, what's out there directly to those folks that, have the plans and the 504 plans, individualized education plans, in a way that makes sense and would then call them to us so that we can work with them. Vision and Rehab Services is one of the most highly educated, spirited, committed folks that are very, really interested in the mission that Congress called all of VR agencies to do, which is to undo this inequity of the employment experience that people with disabilities face. And so, I know that the staff there want to, because I meet them every Friday that are working on it, and they're available. It's just that we want to find folks, and it's not a perfect system either, but it's trying to draw them into the program is really it does a lot. It does a lot.
And I think too, we shared the number of different committees that again we have ISB staff on, but ensuring again within our committees do we have DRS staff, and we just got an appointment today from DHS to be on our advisory council, and it'd been a vacant position and we were missing that voice on our advisory council. So just being able to ensure that we have the right people at the table in our meetings, just as we're trying to go to the various meetings as well.
One last chance for anybody who has questions. Okay. I want to thank both of you for your time today. I think it's really informative to have the directors in the room. Let's give them a round of applause.